So I'm about to start grinding rust off of all those. And so I set up this box extraction fan, and as we've learned from wildfires, we can put filters on them. And so I taped it up to cover the part that the filter didn't cover. And I just have an airflow direction. And so I'll plug that in along with my grinder and hopefully not be so covered in dust. There are so many surfaces to do. Don't get discouraged. Just keep your head down looking at the beam in front of you and just carry on. It's actually not as bad as it looks. It just takes some patience and just get in the zone. What also helped kept me going and encouraged was seeing the before and after, just like you can see in this little video clip. A little bit of wire wheeling makes a big difference. In some places, the rust was so thick that the wire wheel wouldn't be able to knock it off, as you can see here. And then you have to use a welding hammer, which is actually very satisfying. In the back of the trailer, there's a real mess here at this part of the chassis where the angle iron that holds up the bumper was attached to the rest of the chassis. You can see that it wasn't welded along the top join there. So when it got wet, it rusted, the rust swells, and just pushed that metal further and further apart. In order to have free access to the entire chassis for rust removal, I first had to remove the wheel wells, which involved drilling out some rivets, and in this case, using a little bit of force. I think this is about an hour and a half or two of work, and I got to about that beam there. Started doing a little bit on those there, and this isn't actually as bad as I thought it'd be. Time to replace the wire wheel, and very important to wear eye protection because these things do break off, and one went through my pants. So yeah, wear long sleeves and long pants as well, not shorts. This air filter worked. It was more yellow when it started. I strongly recommend putting a tarp down underneath where you're working to catch all of the debris. You can see just how much the rust chipping and wire wheeling generates. Here's another before and after showing just what a few minutes of effort with a wire wheel can do. There are so many nooks and crannies to get into, especially in the suspension. Another little time lapse to give you an idea of how much work this really is. Another pile of debris. This all would have ended up in my yard if I hadn't used a tarp. Actually, before I do all the wire wheeling from underneath, I need to go through and cut the rest of these out. These were bolts that were holding the wood flooring in. And then yeah, from underneath, they're quite an obstacle to actually cleaning that surface well. So I'm going to put on a cut-off disc onto the grinder and get rid of all these. What I always like to do is make sure to unplug it so that it doesn't start up while I'm trying to change the wheel off or put a cutting disc on. So that way, no accident. Some of the bolts I couldn't reach well because they're inside some channel, so I used these vice grips instead. Alright, it does work. Working on your back with the grinder overhead is really tiring. Here you can see my arms just needing a break. Alright, this is pretty tiring. So most of the resting is done. I'm going to crop that out and replace those. I might even do this beam here. Seems a little loose or a little wobbly. First, there's that one there too. So a few to do here at the front. Overall, looking pretty good. And I cut this out. You can see it's totally rotten. I'm quite excited to do it. So whenever you're cutting, you always want sparks to come towards you, because that way if this catches, it will go away from you.
Although I'm showing all the bits I cropped out in this one segment, I actually would just cut out a couple pieces at a time and then replace them. I would really recommend doing that, especially if you have several pieces in one area. You don't want to cut out too much and let the frame relax too much from its intended position.
So satisfied to cut that out, and it's going to be replaced actually with a beefier piece of channel. Here's a quick side-by-side of the new 3-inch channel versus the 3-inch channel was pre-existing in the chassis. The metal supplier I went to, they just said that this one doesn't really exist, and like this was the smallest one I can get. I want to cut away from this so I don't damage this. While getting that off, I could always grind off any remainder bits.
I recommend a light touch with the grinder. I never pushed it too hard. I usually let gravity do the work.
So great to get that out. So with this one, I was just going to try and cut out this flat part and put a piece of flat bar there and weld it all up. But actually, I think I'm just going to cut the whole thing out and get a local sheet metal place to bend me up a new one. And same with this one. On this side, that looks pretty bad too. Pretty bad there. Other than that, it's not as bad as the other side. I'm thinking I might do this cross here because it feels like it gives a bit when I step on it. Up front here is not looking in great shape. It's nice to get it out because I can get rid of this deeper rust there that was hidden behind it. Same with that side. This is after actually use the grinding disc a bit and then use the wire wheel, and that looks a lot better. Same on this side. To get this bumper off, I'm gonna have to get in there, which I think I can't really do with the grinder. Cut this part. But that part will be pretty tricky. I might have to get a Sawzall. You can see just how bad the bottom of the bumper is. That comes from the bumper. And it's welded here, and it's welded in there. It's welded right there. So maybe that's something to think about, actually, just kind of cropping all that out. Because also this angle iron is really bent there. Of course, same story on the right side. And the bumper is just so close to the rest of the body. I mean, how could you ever clean this surface if you had to? So if I do crop it all out, I might make the bumper stick out a bit more. So this is more accessible for cleaning and painting if need be. I've got the old bumper kind of semi-supported by these jack stands. I'm going to try and cut that there, maybe at some angle. I'm cutting it obviously at an angle there. Yeah, I was just trying to mimic kind of this angle here, and that works a lot better than I expected. That was not as bad to cut as I thought either. Obviously it wasn't ideal because I had sparks going away from me. I just couldn't think of any other way to cut it in that corner. I mean, I couldn't reach in far enough from this side. That poor bumper. I guess they came in handy. You can see how bent the angle is there too. Very satisfying. All right, this is most of the old steel I cut out and I'm about to take to the dump.
This part wasn't very expensive, even if you count the jack stands, coming in at about $70. Granted, I already had some tools like the grinder and the face mask. Overall, it took me about 13 hours to do the rust removal and cut out the bad pieces of metal in this trailer. I hope you'll join me in the next video where I'll show you how I welded all those pieces back in.